Welcome to Sales is Not a Dirty Word, the podcast that shows you how to convert 8 out of 10 sales conversations without acting like a douchebag. I'm your host, innovative sales coach, Aleasha Bahr, the creator of the Black Sheep Sales Method. Because if it's a fit, it's a fact, and there is no selling involved. If you're a service provider selling your own service and you're ready to sell differently than the mainstream status quo and win more sales without pressure, pitching, or pretending to be someone else, then this is for you. If you want to know more about the Black Sheep Sales Method, then go to Aleashabahr.com. This episode is with Delaney Thompson. She is the co-founder of Bahia AI and just a real black sheep, if I can say. She really she did the corporate thing and she did the school thing, but she had the same experience that so many of us have had. And I think she has a really powerful story to bring to everybody about how she transitioned out of that and maybe how to avoid those same, I don't want to call them missteps because for some people they're really great, but for the person that they're not going to serve, we can talk about what to do instead. So, welcome to the big show. Sales is not a dirty word.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
So excited you're here, Delaney. 26 years old with your own AI tool. And how many years were you went to school, you did the school thing, right?
Yeah, my schooling was not very traditional. I went to school, dropped out, went back to school, dropped out, and then went back to school. So yeah, I would say school was never really for me, for a lot of the reasons that we'll talk about. But yeah, I gave it my best attempt, I would say, and ended up graduating, but yeah, not traditionally.
What made you keep going back?
So the first time I went to school, I went for like the traditional, like you graduate high school, you're all excited, you're applying to colleges, but most people have no idea what to take. And I was 17 years old, so I don't know why anybody ever let me decide at that age what I should be spending all this money on learning about when I had no idea what I wanted to do. So the first time I went for communications, and no idea even to this day really what that means. So I went to communications, left to then pursue an entrepreneurship program because I just knew I wanted to start my own business. Went to this entrepreneurship program, and just the more I was sitting there, the more I was like, this all seems pretty useless. Why am I spending this money to sit in this classroom and listen to people teach me how to make a business plan and like present my business and all of the stuff that I was paying to sit there for when I could have just been working at the time making money to fund a business. So then I dropped out. And then the only time I ended up going back is because I was so close to finishing the first time I dropped out. And I went back during COVID when everything was, a lot of things were shut down. And I quite frankly didn't have much else to do. So I did it online. And that was why.
I mean, that really mimics my experience with school. I mean, even in high school, I was like, I did my senior year the co-op program where I could work and make money for half of the day and only be at school in the beginning of the day. Cause I was like, I would just really benefit from making some money and learning some things in real-time experience than sitting in these classrooms. And I was a communications degree with a minor in Spanish. It's basically just, it's very broad, like it can be even communicating inside of an organization, like how departments are communicating with each other, but also like how you're communicating with the public, like PR is part of that program and stuff. But it's super generalist and very expensive for something that's so general and has nothing to do with sales for sure. I feel really bad for anybody who's coming out of an undergrad program applying for a sales job because 4 years of experience in the career is going to be so much better for someone than like going through a random program that had like nothing to do with sales. So it's funny that you felt like that too and were so blunt and direct about it because that's something that people like I've always gotten, shit for basically being blunt and direct in this way. Like, that's like, I don't really see the purpose here. You just didn't buy into it the way everybody says you should because it's what people do, which is what everybody ends up doing. And then they go into all this debt. And so, are there any careers that you feel like do make a big difference to go to school for?
Definitely, like, definitely engineering and medical and yeah, like, there's a lot of things that you need schooling to do. But yeah, if you're looking to get into sales, like you said, just sales experience is what everybody's looking for. I mean, some jobs might be looking for an undergrad degree, but most of the time, even that if that's a requirement, especially now that I'm in the recruitment space, even if that's a requirement, typically your years of sales experience is going to outshine that regardless. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely I mean, in general, for literally any job, I would rather have them have 4 years of experience rather than the time in a classroom taking a test or doing a project or something. Um, yes, I totally agree, like, engineering and medicine, although medicine is now so much about, like, pharmaceuticals and, like, what dosages to take and stuff, like, how to memorize what to prescribe for what symptom. But, I mean, that is I wish that it could just be, like, experience at the same time you're in school, because it's like when you're just in a classroom, it's just not the same until you get on site for the job, and it's so cripplingly expensive in America.
Yeah, I was lucky, in Canada, it's not as expensive as the States. Like, you're not going to be in debt for years and years from it, but still, like, the time and money that you're spending, and time is money, sitting in a class versus getting real life experience and actually learning things about business and sales. Yeah, I've learned so much more, even just my first sales job as a car salesperson, than I ever did in school, I would say, is about sales and
Yeah,
business, actually.
yeah, sales and business, honestly, because it's, like, in practice, it's not in theory. School is just theory, and I've heard this, also about, like, business degrees. The professor hasn't ever started a business, but he's teaching business, like, or she. So I think it's so interesting that you did car sales. What made you choose car sales?
So, car sales was a funny one. I think at the time I was a waitress and I was just looking for a sales job. I just knew that I wanted to do something in sales. And so this dealership hired this sales coach who came into the dealership and was like, instead of hiring a bunch of people who have done car sales for 10 plus years, we're going to hire these young, eager to learn people and just mold them into salespeople. We're going to tell them what to say. We're going to teach them the scripts. And I was part of this like cohort, I guess, of maybe there was like 4 of us at the same time. I think the job posting was just on Indeed. I show up and it was like one of those typical sales. I don't know.
Training.
It's kind of funny in sales, just whenever you're going for a sales job, I think they always tell you that you're gonna make 100K. So it's typical. Like, I walk into this room and I'm like 18 years old, and it's this guy in a suit, and everybody's dressed up with like notebooks, and he's like, "If you guys stick with it, like you're gonna make 100K." And like, yeah, just really hammered home this everybody was gonna make 100K if we just trusted him. So it was actually a really weird experience, but I got into it and sold a lot of cars, and me and this other guy who got hired at the same time, very, like, similar, we were just hungry for money and just the sales managers would tell us sometimes, like, the most ruthless things to say, and we'd just go out and say it and it would work, and yeah, it was just a funny experience, especially into, like, the sales world and how it all works, but yeah.
Yeah. Did you find any of those I know then you went what drew you into corporate? Like, why were you drawn into corporate at all?
Um, Drawn into corporate, like, for car sales with Toyota?
No, to work for them.
Oh,
Is
to
it
work.
not that you had other corporate experiences that were, like, more traditional, like, behind a desk and a computer, right?
So I went from car sales to starting my own business, and then after starting my own business, I then went to work for a tech startup, which it
Mm.
wasn't like a huge corporation, but it was still like the traditional, I guess, like org that I worked for after that.
Yeah. So I think what would be, like, interesting to understand is what made you drawn to entrepreneurship, and then what made you, like, go to corporate after your first entrepreneurial endeavor?
Good question. So, with that, I had tried 2 different businesses. One of them was selling I had a smoothie shop. And for that one, I just realized you have to sell so many smoothies to make money. So
Yeah.
that was very once I realized that and the money and the time and everything was put into that, had to do a quick reverse. But then the other one was a service-based business and realized that's way better. Just the higher ticket priced items. Both of them, of course, though, you definitely, especially the service-based business, as the forefront of all of the sales for that. But at the end of the day, I think for both of those businesses, it was a grind to make a little bit of money. Whereas what drew me back is I first went back to tech sales, and I was just like, I don't want to be the boss. I just want to go clock in, clock out after being like a tired entrepreneur at that point. Now it's
Mhm,
different,
mhm.
the entrepreneurial journey I'm on right now, but that was the thought at the time. I was like, I am sick of managing people. Had a couple employees, and it just felt like I was like babysitting all the time, even though I was only like 22 or 23 at the time. But yeah, it was just a lot. So
Yeah, I mean, I hear that echoed a lot. But like it's kind of not you almost get like decision fatigue. Like I just don't want it. There's something really wonderful about your future and your income being completely in your control. And then there's something that's like a ton of pressure about that too. That you just want to I've heard of this where people are like, I just kind of want something mindless. It's not all the time because that saying that you quit a 40-hour a week job to have an 80-hour a week job as an entrepreneur. And you can avoid that. I'm guessing that you've created this newest venture a little bit differently so that you're not having that 80-hour a week kind of job.
totally. Yeah. So I think too, just having like a physical location. So with the smoothie shop, for example, having like you're constantly thinking about the next day. You're constantly thinking about the inventory. Do I have enough of this?
Mm, mm.
Employees calling in, all of this. I think building the online business was a big difference. Because I still have the flexibility. Like I don't feel trapped. So before even I felt super trapped. Like you can't leave the store. You can't take a weekend off. Like it was super hard to actually have a work life balance. But now with the internet, like I can take my laptop and still like go work from Mexico City for the week or something. And that's really, I think, what is differentiating the entrepreneurial journey for me.
Yeah, but you had a service business too, not after the smoothie one, right? What service were you providing?
So that one was a Volkswagen photo booth bus. So, how
That's
did
fun.
I explain that right? Yeah, so it was a 1977 Volkswagen that I bought in Puerto Vallarta, renovated it to have a little dressing room in the back and a bench, and built a photo booth inside of it, and then was renting it out to weddings. So I actually kind of the smoothie shop and that overlapped.
Uh,
But when I was realizing, oh, okay, you can charge $800 for a couple hours at this, even upwards to $1,000, $2,000 versus how many smoothies, like doing the math, I'm like, how many smoothies do I have to sell to actually make $1,000? So that was also a big eye opener just for like service based versus selling like a physical low ticket item for sure.
yeah. So, I mean, I've always been every time I see somebody open a brick and mortar, like a restaurant or a smoothie or whatever, I'm like, God bless that person. Like, I'm going to go there and I'm going to buy it. And I have so much respect for how hard it is for them to pay their rent. And like all of the physical things they need to create whatever they're selling. Like, it is not a business that I would be interested in at all. And you really have to have a dream to make that happen. Like,
Yeah.
um,
Like
not
a passion project, I think, most of the time. And some people can do it really well. But for me, yeah, the inventory, the rent, the overhead, like you're still maintaining the space and it's a lot. And I think that's probably got to be one of the hardest businesses out
I
there.
I think so too. So you did something that I did also in this latest endeavor and like saved money using the day job to kind of fund the second job and sort of get proof of concept. So it's what I did too whenever I started my marketing agency. I started offering like services on the side to different clients and then, you know, I personally think that's the best in my experience, the best way. Like a lot of people are like, burn the boats, like no way out, just go all in. And I think that puts so much pressure that's like bad juju on somebody to perform and make a result. So, how long did you do that? Of course, it's like a lot at a point. You're like, oh, I have no time because I'm doing 2 jobs. But, how long did you do that?
Yeah, so we started Bahia in June, and that's when we got our first customer. Maybe actually, sorry, it was the May end, was when we came up with the idea. We didn't even have a product. We just started pitching people just to see if they would even be interested in getting on a demo. First person said they wanted a demo. We like quickly made the demo slides. Like we really roughed it at the beginning. But then we got our first paying customer and didn't have a product built, but built a very janky MVP. Sold it, like they paid for it. They had good results. Everything went well. So that was like our first indicator that we were like, so we should put more time into this and put more resources into it. Because of course, at the idea stage, an idea is nice, but until somebody's willing to pay for it, it's really just an idea.
Yeah.
So I believe it was when we got to 10 customers, which was 10 paying customers, which was around August. So it had been 2 months of
Okay.
working a full-time day job plus starting our business, have like onboarding new clients, selling. And the tricky thing was that I couldn't put it on my LinkedIn until I quit my job too. So that was hard because I couldn't, a lot, of course, in the early days, a lot of your business is from your personal network and referrals and trying to, it's a lot easier to sell to people you know, or even just get a warm introduction. So since I was like incognito about it, that made it really hard. And my business partner, Danica, she's much more risk adverse as me, even. So I was kind of following her lead on it because I think if it was me, I am a little bit more spontaneous and maybe would have even done it after the first 2 to 5 customers. But yeah, I was kind of following her lead on that. And she had a lot more of an important day job than me as well. So as soon as she pulled plug on hers, I was like, all right, it's my turn too. So
Yeah. I mean, if you have that much response that quickly, I would agree that you've got something there. So tell us about Bahia.
So we are building now our V2, which is an AI talent sourcer. So we've branded it as Mia, which is a digital worker who's like on your team. You hire Mia, and Mia is just talent sourcing for you and giving you interview ready candidates. So what that means for people who aren't familiar with talent sourcing is typically when you post a job, you're dependent a lot on inbound applicants, and a lot of them are just low quality or don't quite match the
Mhm.
job description. So what we do is we identify people who do match the job description like perfectly, or almost perfectly. We have like a match percentage, and then outreach them and pitch the job to them. And then once they're interested, we present it to you as the user. So you're only looking at people who match the job and want to try. So that's our elevator pitch.
Yeah. So, did Danica have a job in talent sourcing or something? Is that how you got the idea for talent sourcing in specifically?
So we had another like side business that we were working on together. Nothing that we were gonna quit our jobs over, but it was like an online community for helping people find remote jobs. So that was our first business. So we were
Mm.
already working together on that. And she was the director of ops at a tech company, and she was hiring for her own roles. And she was using LinkedIn Recruiter and manually talent sourcing. And we got together one night and she was like, this process is so broken. Like, whatever we're doing with it was called Remote Rise, our other business. She's like, we should pivot and we should look into this and figure out a way to automate it. And she's also running an AI competition at work at the time. So, like, was trying to figure out ways to make their business more efficient with AI.
Mm.
So, at the beginning, we just, yeah, rolled up our sleeves and tried to figure out how to automate things. So, we just stitched a bunch of tools together, ran a bunch of automations, and yeah, we came up with that idea. And within, I actually think it was that night I went home and just started like emailing a bunch of people and just outreaching a bunch of people. And right away, people were like, "Yeah, you are right. Talent sourcing is broken. I'm down to see what you're building." So super, super quick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the best way to start anything is to have a real need. And you had somebody who was in the trenches of that need. So, I had somebody on this podcast a while back that was talking about, a lot of times people like have an idea for a company, but it's sort of based on what they think is a good idea, not necessarily a need for anybody. And they try to go and make it a need for people rather than just observing who you want to work with and seeing what is broken in their lives. Obviously, like that wasn't exactly how this went, but you sort of, somebody was, your partner was experiencing firsthand how broken something was. So, I mean, I think that there's a lot to be learned there of, if people can look around and see anything like that in their own lives and if there is a way to solve it. And, I love that you guys were like, let's just see.
Yeah, and I think to your point too, a business is really like what you're selling is really a solution to a problem. And I think a lot of people forget that. Like they don't identify the problem first or they don't quite identify the solution good enough. And they just are like, I want a business. And yeah, to your point, they try and brainstorm all these ideas like that could work, but is it actually a big enough problem that people are going to pay for and that you're going to have competitive advantage? And yeah, I see that a lot with a lot of people who want to be entrepreneurs, but maybe don't quite have like work experience or like hands-on experience with the problem that they're solving and or trying to solve in general.
Yeah, it almost feels like sometimes entrepreneur, like I was never, do you have entrepreneurs in your family?
Yeah, both my parents.
Okay. Well, I do too. So I was not naive about what owning a business means. And I was not interested actually, because it's a lot of uncertainty and fluctuation. And I was just like, I realized, I think a lot of people sort of, what's the word when you like idealize it?
Mhm.
They make it something different than what it actually is in their brain. And so they're like, I'm going to be a business owner. So instead of like creating a business because there's a solution that needs to be created, they're creating a business because they want to be a business owner. And there's like this ego attached to the idea that makes it so hard for them to let go of it when it's not landing. Have you seen that?
Totally. Yeah, totally. And then also, yeah, like you said, with the ego of being a business owner, the reality is a lot of business owners are not making as much money as they could be if they took a different path because, like you said, maybe the business is just not quite solving a good enough problem. Or, I mean, there's so many factors, but yeah, I do agree. A lot of times it is this like glamorized ego ego push to start a business and
Yeah, it's like, especially with Silicon Valley, people are like, "Ooh, like, let's just get together and, like, make a startup. Like, let's just create a tool and, like, see what happens." And it's like so much money and time gets wasted on that stuff, because the idea of it is so fun to dream about. Like, not the idea that's being put into action, but the idea of having a startup.
yeah, yeah. I think you see that a lot. It's kind of like a running joke on LinkedIn, like the San Francisco tech bros kind of joke. So yeah, I think definitely a lot of people just like I'm going to make a tool, and yeah, without knowing a problem or having the experience in it. So
Yeah, so I mean that makes a big difference, and the fact that you had the sales experience and the connections, you weren't scared to like reach out and be like, "Hey, who wants this?" and like not ready to not take it personally if they didn't.
yeah, even even now, I think not taking it personally is something that Danica and I talk about a lot and kind of have to scale back because a lot of times it is like ex colleagues that you reach out to or people like one guy I went to his wedding and I really thought that he would make an intro to me or for me. But yeah, sometimes you just have to realize it's really not personal and it might just not be for them or they're too busy. And there's a million reasons why somebody's going to say no to you. And I think rejection is something that, of course, like we're super used to in sales. Um, but some people, even Danica, I know, doesn't have as much sales experience. And even just this past Friday, she was like, the rejection's really getting to me. And I was like, no, it's the name of the game. Keep it up.
Well, I mean, sometimes it depends on the deal. Like it can feel like such a gut punch when you're like, "Man, this was so perfect. This person could really use it. This was just like everything lined up." Like it can feel a bit like a gut punch and you can mourn it for a second and then like, you have to move on. And there's data that can be taken from the rejections too. Like, were we contacting the wrong people? Like, was it how it was positioned? Was it that they were at a different stage in their business that they didn't need it? Or
Mhm.
there's ways to use it to become better. But I just loved how you were like, let's see if anybody wants it, and they do, and so let's do it. I don't know, just the idea, the creation of it, the lightheartedness of it really makes it easier to succeed. And I love that you just like from the beginning were like, I want to do this and I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to do this brick and mortar thing. And now I'm going to do this online business. And I hope that anybody listening can feel not that it shouldn't be taken seriously, but that it doesn't need to be so serious that it paralyzes you, because it seems like so many people just think about it and think about it and think about it. And you don't, and maybe it's because it's perpetuated that you have to burn the boats, and that's scary, and not have a safety net or whatever. But do it on the side and just play around, F around and find out.
Yeah. Even yeah, like you said too, a lot of people think that they need to have this perfect product and this perfect idea and this perfect solution before selling it. But like if you look at our first version, which was only like 6 months ago versus what we're building now, it's completely different because we just got a product in front of people and just asked for feedback. And like you said, I think it's not that deep. Just start, ask for feedback. If people aren't liking it, you can always pivot. And I always see these LinkedIn stories and like these really good entrepreneur stories, just seeing like how many times people pivoted even in their business. Like there's so many ways that you can differentiate once you start and you realize maybe something's not working. But I think the main thing is just start, put something out there and see who's willing to pay for it. And like you said, with the rejections too, it's always something that you can learn from. So if somebody's rejecting what you're first selling and you get a bunch of no's at the beginning, just ask like, what would make you say yes? Or like, what about it could be different? And from there, that's where your first pivot is maybe. And yeah, I really like, I really like where you're going with that. Just try it, see what sticks. F around, find out.
Yeah, and, yes, I love, like, asking people, "Can you just let me know so that I can make this better?" And one thing that helps a lot, that if anybody listening is in sales and is thinking about selling for themselves, the reason Danica is probably like, "Ouch," like, it hurts a little more, is that she's selling her own baby, and that does hurt a little more. And if you can almost, like, pretend you're selling someone else's tech solution again, the rejection just doesn't hurt as bad. Like, it just doesn't.
Yeah, it's true. And I think too, to your point, like when it is your own baby and you're so convinced yourself it's a good solution and you're listening to what they say during the demo or just the initial discovery call and you're like, this is perfect for them. But then, yeah, it's probably just in how you positioned or like maybe that type of decision maker you need to like hit on different points. And there's just always ways that you can iterate. And even just I would always say, like, that call is always not a waste of time anyways. You're still building a relationship with a potential client, and you can always circle back and say, even if you change things in 6 months and say, "Hey, by the way, I ended up adding this, thought it could be beneficial for you." I think a rejection in sales is not always like a closed door forever.
It's like rarely a closed door forever, which is it's just you're speaking to a fundamental difference between the way that sales is more effective, in my opinion, and how a lot of people do sales in the online high ticket space is not that. It's like this person's dead to me. They said, no, they're dead to me. Like, buy it now or it'll be $7,500 more. And never call me again because you don't care about your future or whatever. And that is such a terrible like use of your energy. Your energy and time is just wasted after that. Because like you said, these people like they're just humans, and there's definitely an opportunity down the line that could work out much better. So
Mhm.
I think it's like a female thing too. Females are so good at sales. I bet females are so good at car sales. I'm
Yeah, I there was actually when we were first building, like, that first team I told you about, it was actually mostly females other than one male, and we crushed it. I think people were more used to walking into a car dealership and seeing, like, somebody who's been in the business for 30 years, and then when they'd walk in and it'd be, like, some young 19-year-old girl, they were like, "Okay, like, tell me what you have to say." Like, yeah, it was more of a
Yeah,
trust thing too.
totally. There's been data that shows that customers trust women more. They think that they're like less likely to lie. They're also better listeners. They're also like naturally more compassionate. These are all just like natural skills that come from being raised as a female, which hopefully it'll be more even in future generations. Um, but I mean, I think that's really cool that that car company was like, we're gonna bring on these young, like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. Because I mean, I'm sure they're just so tired at a point of these old dogs in the game. I've been here, I done, I know, and it's just you get tired of like trying to manage somebody who thinks they know it all, you know?
And just to your point that even in the recruiting space, we see a lot of clients who we're working with right now who are using our tool be like, oh, exclude in your search people who have worked 10 plus years at these big companies like Meta and whatever. And, it's because that exact reason. It's like, we don't want somebody and think that they know better and tell us how they do it. And we want somebody who's eager to learn and who we can teach how to do it the way we do it. So, yeah, I think it's relative in sales and just a lot of jobs. It's starting to shift a bit more.
What interesting intel. I know that there's a real issue for older people, like ageism is a thing. But I think it's to your point, like it's the attitude that comes with the age that makes the difference. Like if you're still open, like your wisdom and your experience can be valuable and you have to be able to adapt and do things differently rather than be like, I know so much more than my young boss or whatever, you know?
Mhm.
So, okay. Well, Delaney, that's a great stopping point for us. And we've reached the end of yet another episode of Sales is Not a Dirty Word. Thank you again, Delaney, for coming to make an appearance as our guest. And can you tell everyone how they could find out more about you and how they could work with Bahia?
Yes. So our website is www.bahia.ai. So BAHIA.ai. And feel free to connect on LinkedIn as well. Delaney Thompson on LinkedIn.
Okay, I hope this was valuable for all of you. And thank you for your time. If it was, please like, subscribe, share. You know that stuff means so much and it just takes a second. So I really appreciate you. And until next time.